Hi everyone, this is Dr. Diane Hayden, publisher of Natural Nutmeg magazine. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn live videos with our expert writers and contributors to Natural Nutmeg on how to cope with the COVID-19 situation, and also uplifting interviews about how to integrate more healthy and holistic lifestyle tips into your daily life. And today I'm excited to welcome Dr. Dori Gatter. She is a psychotherapist, relationship expert, and owner of West Hartford Holistic Counseling Center group psychotherapy practice for over 20 years. West Hartford Holistic Counseling Center is a group of psychotherapists trained to work with all issues, including anxiety, depression, parenting, teens, families, eating disorders, trauma, relationships, life transitions, grief, loss, and more. So welcome, Dori. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Awesome. So I wanted to jump right into one question that I think probably a lot of people, or situation, a lot of people are dealing with right now, and that is being home all the time with your spouse or significant other.
Yes.
Which can prove challenging. And you know, I think for some of us who work from home, we may or may not be in a situation like that regularly. But a lot of us now who either work outside the home, or maybe one spouse works from home, the other goes to work, are now in a situation where you're with each other all the time.
Right. That's right.
So what kinds of recommendations are you, giving to people? What kinds of stressors are you seeing, and how can people better, be equipped with that?
So I'm seeing a few different things as we're going through this. I'm seeing, one of the things that I'm seeing is that, everybody has their own style of calming themselves down and calming their nervous systems down. There's two major ways that we calm our nervous systems down. And there's two different types of people. One is an autoregulator, and that means somebody who's, more of an introvert who likes to go away and kind of calm their own nervous system down by themselves and have some quiet time. And the other type of person is a co-regulator, and how they'd calm their nervous system down is in connection. And a lot of times what happens is that you get one of each in a relationship.
Yep, because we're attracted to the opposite.
We're attracted to the opposite, somebody who holds something else that we don't, right? And so that can cause some conflict if you don't even know like which type you are, because we all unconsciously want the other person to be more like us.
Exactly.
So, right. So what I'm seeing during this time, especially during this time, is, one person who's typically the co-regulator might want to talk about what's going on in the world more, to get connection and support for it. They might be the person that watches the news or reads the paper more and wants to talk about it more. And the auto-regulator, the one who likes to kind of go off by themselves and calm down, that may be really overstimulating for their nervous system and too much, and doesn't want to talk about it as much.
Totally.
Right?
I totally see that. Yep.
So you have these two people, and I mean, this is just what's happening right now, is that in and of itself can cause some conflict when you have one person who wants to, talk about their stress and one person that doesn't so much.
Right. And that makes total sense. So, what are your suggestions for that? Because I can actually see that a little bit in my relationship. I'm sometimes the kind of person that wants to just go be by myself and meditate. But I wouldn't consider myself necessarily an introvert. Maybe I'm a combination of both. I think people might get confused here a little bit if they think they're like, wait a minute, I'm more of a gregarious person, because I'm like the planner. I'm the one who gets all our friends together. I'm the one who plans the events and that kind of thing. So from that perspective, I'm more extroverted.
Yeah,
but when it comes to when it comes to just, okay, now I need quiet time. I don't want to watch the news. I don't want any more negativity being thrown at me. I want to go over in this private space and meditate. That's my introverted side coming out.
Yes. That's how you calm your nervous system down. Right.
Yep.
Right. Exactly.
So is it really just, a matter of understanding that about your partner and, not getting into an argument about it. I mean, how do you, what kinds of tips do you give people
Yeah,
so that they don't get stressed out about the fact that they're different and that's okay?
they're different. Right. So first off, I think it really helps people to know that there's a reason why you're different. And it's not something you have control over. This is just how your nervous system works. And even just knowing that and being able to identify which one you are can really help have compassion for the other person rather than they're just trying to. Often what happens is for the co-regulator, they feel hurt or abandoned when the auto-regulator wants to go off by themselves. So they feel rejected. Like, oh, that person doesn't want to be with me anymore. What's going on? Do they not like me? Do they not love me? Are they mad at me? And of course, then wants to talk about that.
More talking.
More talking. Right, right. And so sometimes it's really helpful to know that none of that's really going on. I mean, maybe it is, and that's a part of something else. But on a regular basis, that's just how they manage their nervous system, and it has nothing to do with you.
Yep.
Right? And so if you can have an understanding and compassion for how the other person works, then you can give them a little bit more about, what they need. So if you give the autoregulator, easily as some compassion and let them have their downtime, then they're going to come back into connection more readily. They're not going to always be looking for the exit door to go get what they need. They're going to go get what they need and feel like they can come back, and it's more of an easy connection. So even just having compassion and understanding, be able to talk about how you're different and what you need is huge, and that helps.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the main thing that prevents people from getting into arguments about it, is really
Right.
just, okay, you're this type of person, I'm this type of person, so we understand that we're different. We're going to have connection time where the TV will be on, or we're talking about, whatever the situation is. But
Right.
there's also going to be this other time where I or the other person is going to need private space.
That's
And
right.
as long as both people are present and aware of that's why that's happening, then I think that would really just automatically alleviate any kind of argument.
It does. It alleviates the hurt feelings.
Right, exactly.
Personally. Mm-hmm. Right.
Awesome. So a couple other things. I've got a bunch of questions for you, so I
Okay.
hope we can fit them all in.
Cool.
So, and maybe this kind of rolls into that. How to get past having the same argument with your spouse. I feel like a lot of couples tend to, continually, maybe it's not the same subject, but the basis of it is always the same. There's some underlying thing that the argument is always the same about. And how do we, I guess, recognize that, and what do we implement to move past that?
Great question. Long answer. Here we go. It's part of every relationship that we can, there's usually like, maybe 3 or 4 things that we constantly get into a disagreement about, and that doesn't really change very much. And really well, let's start with what an argument is. And anytime we have an argument or a fight, there's an underlying need to be heard, seen, understood, and validated. Like, that's what an argument is every single time. Right? And so both people are vying to be heard, seen, understood, and validated. And what happens when we get defensive and we just keep coming with trying to get the other person to see, understand, hear, and validate us, and you have 2 people doing the same thing, it starts to escalate. Somehow our system feels like, if I just say this a different way or louder, I'll get my point across.
Right. Why?
Right?
They must not be listening to me because
Right.
they're not agreeing with me.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And it's even not so much about agreeing. I mean, although that's nice if they can agree with us, our whole nervous system calms down if we can be seen, heard, understood, and validated, not even have to agree. And so there's a certain type of communication that I teach when I work with couples, and part of it, I can teach it this one step really quickly, is mirroring. And that's what all of us are looking for. We're looking to be mirrored, which gives us the feeling of being seen, heard, understood, and validated. You know, if you trace it back to childhood, you know, when a baby or a child says something or does something, we mirror them, we smile with them, we make a face that mirrors them so that they feel connected to. And subconsciously, that's, even as grown-ups, what we're looking for from our partner.
Interesting. Yep.
Is that mirroring that shows us, I'm here, I'm listening to you, you're important to me. So we never lose that need. And that's really what we're looking for. So even if you just repeat back, which is what mirroring is. So what I hear you saying is, you know, you really get angry with me when I don't take out the trash and I don't remember to do that. Did I get that right? You don't have to agree with the person about everything they're saying. This is the most potent tool in your toolbox for bringing the escalation down. We all have the power to bring the escalation down. If you just start mirroring, there's nothing to fight about. The person is getting heard and understood, and it immediately brings down the fight or flight response, because an argument is one or two people in a fight or flight response. So the main goal of any healthy relationship is for both people to feel safe. And to feel safe, we need to feel heard, seen, understood, and validated. That's the goal of a healthy relationship. It doesn't mean you have to see eye to eye on everything. It doesn't mean you have to agree on everything. You're two different people. You're both, you, myself included, we're all difficult in our own ways. None of us are easy to live with.
That is true. We're finding that out more now than ever, that we're all stuck
now
together.
more than ever. So if anybody's out there thinking like, geez, I'm really easy to live with, like, that's an illusion.
Yeah, exactly.
All,
you've been by yourself. That's why.
Right. You've been by yourself. We're all difficult in our own ways, and that's not a problem. It's just the truth.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I mean, it seems so simple. Like, you know, oh, that's easy. I can do that. Just, you know, basically what you're saying is you're acknowledging what that person's complaint is, so to speak, what they're saying. Whereas I think our first reaction is to defend. Like, you know, so they're saying this about you, you know, I don't like when you do blah, blah, blah. And so you're triggered, and your first response is, well, that's not true. I don't do it that way, or that's not my intention, or I'm a different person, so I'm going to do it this way. Your first knee-jerk reaction is to defend.
To defend, exactly. And what you just said was really important, Diane, is that, you know, it's much easier, myself included, to voice a complaint rather than a need.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as, you know, you never do this, or how come you never do this, or, you know, whatever the complaint is, as soon as it comes out as complaint, we have set up the dynamic for the other person to get defensive. Right? And it's much easier to voice a complaint than a need, because saying a need feels vulnerable. You know, hey, can you please, blah, 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 whatever it is. And a need or a request is not a demand, which means they have the option to say no. You know, and none of us really like hearing no. And we need to be true to ourselves. No, I'm sorry, I can't give you that right now. You know, that's not an easy thing to say when there's a request coming your way. So both places, stating a need and request and saying your truth, whether you can meet it or not, are more vulnerable positions to take. And it's also where you can connect. Stating a complaint and getting a defensive response is distancing. Yep. So for people who are saying, geez, I really want to be closer, well, that means making ourselves more vulnerable.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That makes perfect sense. We're conditioned, so to speak, to voice, well, first of all, to not be vulnerable, to voice things as complaints.
Right.
Versus to just ask for what you need.
Right. Exactly.
And sometimes you're not going to get that request, and that's okay. You
It
know,
is.
like I have friends who are a couple who one person likes to go out a lot and the other person is more of a homebody. And so there's always this friction because the person that wants to go out wants their significant other to go with them. And yet sometimes they don't want to do that. They're just like, nope, you know, you go, I'm going to stay home. Or they'll try to get their significant other to stay home with them. And
Right.
I think if you know, you really have to be okay with not getting your need met, because then I think that if the other person, if one person has a stronger personality and so they kind of overpower, and let's say that that's the person who wants to stay home, they overpower that other person and make them stay home more when they would really rather go out, then I feel like there's resentment that starts to build.
It's true. And by the way, they can't make somebody do anything. The person's choosing it, right? They're
Yep,
being trying to avoid conflict, trying to please the other person. But yes, you're right. Then they end up feeling resentful.
exactly.
Yeah.
So in that case, you have to be, you know, again, you have to be comfortable with just speaking what your truth is. And like you said, it's not your responsibility to take care of that other person. You need to tell them what it is that you need.
Yeah.
And they can, you know, their response, reaction, or whatever is not for you to have to manage.
It's true. And there's an and to that, not a but. There's a couple things. One is that people don't realize this, but you can expect to get 50% of your needs met in your relationship. 50. That's it.
Hmm. Wow, that's going to come as a shock for some people.
I know. It was a shock to me too.
Yep.
50%. That's it. That's all we can expect. The other 50% we need to get, from ourselves, from, outside, to connection to spirit, however we fill those needs. And then here's the thing. It's kind of hard. It's like this balance between, being independent. You don't want to be so overly independent, and you don't want to be codependent. Not that we're ever perfect, but interdependent is what we're shooting for in our relationships. Meaning, I'm me and you're you, and we have these agreements. You have to have agreements. Think about it. You're not going to go into business with somebody and not have a partnership agreement. Things are going to be a mess about how you're going to run things. Right. And for some reason, we forget that being in relationship and living together is like, it's a partnership.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you have to have agreements, and agreements are win-win. If it's not a win-win, somebody loses, their whole relationship loses. Doesn't work. So for instance, your example of, one person likes to stay home and one person likes to go out in the couple, you need to have an agreement about, I'm going to make myself a little bit uncomfortable and do it, kind of this many times for you. And I'm going to make myself a little bit uncomfortable and do this way so many times for you. And we have to respect where that boundary is. That's the agreement we come up with that works for both of us. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Oh, totally. And I'm just thinking, like, I think that's where I think, we all want to do that for our partner. And where I think it might get tricky is who decides what's fair? Who decides what, right.
It has to be a win-win.
Yeah. That's where the tricky part is, I think, because I think, like, just like you said, we're all different. So one person's needs are going to be different than other person's needs. One person's going to think that, okay, well, if I go out with you once a month, that's going to be enough. Whereas the person who likes to go out is probably like, no, I think I was thinking once a week.
Yeah. In our household with myself and my husband, we have, one of the systems that we use is scale of 1 to 10, meaning, you know, I really want you to come with me to this event. Scale of 1 to 10, how important is that to you? Right?
Yep.
So if it's like a 3 or a 4, and I'm the person who doesn't like to typically go, you know, feels easier to say, okay, so this is one of the times I'm going to opt out. You know, but if say it's a family reunion or something, he says, this one's a 10. Okay, I really need you to come. Okay, I'm going to take that more seriously. That's more important. There's more value on that one.
Yep.
So we have this where we'll easily say, you know, scale of 1 to 10, which one is, where does this land? So it helps us evaluate, you know, where we can
Yeah.
negotiate.
Exactly. Exactly. And if you get to, my next question is this is gonna roll into,
Okay.
you know, the therapy portion of it. You know, if you get to places where the two of you just feel like you just can't get past, whether it's the argument or the negotiation or whatever, how do you handle a situation where one partner is interested and willing to go to counseling and the other person isn't?
It's a great question. Typically, then I would say for the partner who really wants to go get yourself some individual counseling. You know, don't stop yourself from going to get the support that you need. And you need to know, you know, usually the partner who doesn't want to go has some, whether they know it or not, underlying anxiety about going and, you know, being told they're the wrong or bad person or something. And so that people know, if you haven't been to couples counseling before, if you're going to a good couples counselor, that does not happen. It's a neutral space where there isn't one person that's bad or wrong. And both people get to be heard and understood. So that's always good to know if one person's resistant to it. It's typically because they have some anxiety about it. And if they can't get past their anxiety and you can't get the help and the person absolutely won't go, you have to ask yourself, is this a deal breaker? That's always a hard question. And we have those questions. We have that question. We ask it in counseling sometimes, you know, is this issue a deal breaker? Because your partner needs to know how important it is to you. So that's always a question to ask yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's fair. And I think exactly like what you said, I'm sure it's probably, you know, related to anxiety. I was going to add, if that was, if anyone has been in a situation, correct me if I'm wrong here, where a counselor was siding with one person, I would say find a different counselor.
Find a different counselor.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. A good couples counselor is a neutral space.
Right, exactly. So you talk a lot about shadow, and I'm going to have you explain what that word is, because I think there might be people on the call or listening to the recording afterwards that are not familiar what your shadow is or your partner's shadow. So I guess let's just start there, and then I'll get into some of the questions about it.
Okay, so everybody's got a shadow part of them, a shadow voice, and what that really is are the places where we have blind spots or we're unconscious about in ourselves that are working against us and against our partners or anybody else in the world. They're typically those critical voices we can hear that are working against us, and sometimes it's just a feeling of resistance, or I get scared about doing something, and that's a shadow voice, whether you can actually hear words or you just feel it. Everybody experiences it differently. I myself can hear the words. I do have the body feelings of that come along with it, but I can hear the words like, oh, Dori, don't say that, that's going to be stupid, or you can't do that, or whatever the judgments are. Anything that is not of support and love is a shadow voice or experience.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think you know, I've heard this before from other counselors and some of the reading that I've done. There is a purpose for our shadow, correct?
Yeah, the purpose, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. The purpose of our shadow originally was to help protect us and help us survive whatever experiences we've had in the past. So yeah, they absolutely had their value. They don't serve us anymore as adults. It holds us back from having all of our aliveness as adults, but it absolutely helped us survive our past. So yeah, so we have to appreciate why we have that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you said, the way to recognize it is anytime, well, you might hear things, you might have feelings, but basically anything that's, more of a negative critical side,
Yep.
that kind of voice or that kind of a feeling, like a negative feeling, anxiety, that kind, like over the top stress, that kind of thing. So I think it's probably fairly easy for most of us to recognize it in ourselves. How do we recognize when our partner is operating from their shadow?
Yeah, and it's not always easy to recognize in ourselves. We have a certain level of recognition, and then we all have our blind spots.
Hmm.
And typically, what's hard is that typically our partners can see our blind spots. Okay, our partner can see our blind spots, and that is like so hard for us because it feels like they're just like ripping our clothes off and showing us like bare and humiliated to the world. We don't want to see that. We have such judgment around it. And the truth is, we can see each other's blind spots, and that's also typically what can we can get into conflict when we are showing each other our blind spots, but we do it in a shaming way. We're not doing it with kindness. We're saying, you don't blah, 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 and you're whatever it is in a blaming fashion. And what we're really doing is we're showing you your blind spot in a shaming way. And it's going to be hard to take responsibility that way. So, I know for myself, when my husband says, oh, I'm seeing this part about you, and I haven't quite seen it yet, or I'm on the periphery, or I don't want to know it as I feel bad about it. That's hard, right?
Yeah.
That's really hard. So, we have to accept that, yeah, our partners can see our blind spots. They can see our shadow parts.
Well, I also believe that, two people are either attracted to each other or come together for a purpose. And part of that purpose is for each of you to grow and evolve. And the only way that that's going to happen is if you have this situation, if you have conflict, if you're able to see the other person's shadow and you can expose that for them.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I used to, I guess when I was younger, although sometimes I will admit that I still fall into this thinking, my idea of a relationship was that a perfect relationship was no conflict, everybody gets along, it's happy go luckies, skipping through the daisies
Yeah.
or whatever every day. No, there's no fighting. If we fight, oh, that's wrong. Like if we're fighting all the time, that means the relationship is wrong.
Yes.
And I've
So,
realized, go ahead.
So what you're saying, Diane, I'm sorry to interrupt you, is so important because it's what I said before about the mirror, about kids and babies wanting the perfect mirror. That's what that thinking is, wanting the perfect mirror, the perfect parent to be in relationship with, that just mirrors back to us how great we are and it's all good.
Exactly. Yep.
Yep.
That's so funny. I never thought of it that way either, but that's exactly right. Yeah.
It is.
Yep. Yeah. And so what I realize is that, and this is definitely after going through, many years of counseling and, I went through a life coaching certification and done other personal development things. It takes a while to, first of all, recognize what those thoughts are that you have about it's supposed to be perfect or this way or that way or whatever. And then get comfortable with it, I guess is what I'll say, because it's still, I'm not a person who likes confrontation. So still, anytime there is an argument or a disagreement or whatever, I'm just kind of like I just, I don't like that. I don't want to go there. And it's taken a long time for me to see it as, oh, if you didn't have this challenge,
Mhm.
you wouldn't be able to grow or evolve. You
Right.
need the challenge in the relationship. It's showing you something. It's
Totally.
giving, every time it's giving you a different opportunity in how you're going to react and respond.
Totally. You're absolutely right. And what you said before, I would just want to come back to it because you're so right. And thanks for pointing that out, is that we unconsciously pick our partners to help us uncover the shadow parts that need uncovering and grow that part of ourselves. So it's supposed to happen. It's supposed to trigger the stuff that needs to be healed. And that's why we pick the partner we pick. It's always a growth opportunity if we can look at it that way.
Right. Exactly. I mean, for me, um, it, I feel better, I guess, when I look at it that way.
Yeah.
When I hear that, I feel like, oh, okay, it's not supposed to be perfect. It's not going to be like this easy thing. And I'm not saying, we're not saying by any means that all relationships are like that. There's definitely situations where some people are, either they outgrow it, or
Yes.
maybe it wasn't a good match. So I don't want anyone to mistake that we're saying that, oh yeah, if you're fighting 24/7, it's fine. You're just
Yeah.
growing.
Yeah. No, we're not saying that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's, I guess it's more of a comforting feeling to know that, yeah, I mean, this is normal. It's a normal part of relationship. It's how you not only get to, know the other person more and better work together with them, but you learn more about yourself.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Relationships, if we're not focused on the other person all the time, relationships are an amazing way to grow ourselves and grow a stronger sense of self. And even if that means, having your boundaries more, or, seeing all the ways that you need to grow yourself to be a more powerful self in the relationship. You know, where am I needing my own growth? That'll show up in relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So anything else, any other tips that you want to give us as far as communication skills, how we can better communicate with our partner?
I do. This was really important, and we don't often think about this, is that I want to give people, these are like, I feel like some of like the most important tips, even though they sound basic, which is because we're animals and our nervous systems feel safe when we can see each other and hear each other, we will always get into arguments and disagreements if we're communicating via text.
Mm.
Or, I mean, has anybody ever had saying something important via text in a relationship go over well? I've never had it happen.
No, it can be misinterpreted so many times. It's not
Totally
even funny.
misinterpreted. So doing it even over the phone, having any kind of an important conversation, it needs to be eye to eye, face to face. We need to see the other person's facial expressions, their eyes, tone of voice, because we're always reading that as the kid in us would read the parent's face, to see how they're feeling about us. So please don't do any talking about your relationship or anything that could go sideways via text or on the phone or email. Save it for being face to face, whether it's doing this, if you can't be in person, doing it FaceTime or on the computer. And here's the other tip. Don't do it in a car, side to side. Have you ever had a good conversation about the relationship driving in the car together? It goes sideways. And the reason being is because we're side glancing. You can't turn and look at the person. And side glances are considered threatening.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought, I mean, I would have said, don't do it in a car because one of you, or maybe both of you, is not 100% present because you're driving the car.
Right.
But that's so interesting about how you look at a person.
Yeah.
It's that my cousin has this term, she calls it side eye. And it's, to her,
Yeah,
it means like when someone's giving you like the look, like, what's the matter with you? Or, you know, like, what's wrong with you or whatever. They gave me the side eye.
right. So us humans, we consider side glances threatening.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow. That's great. So yeah, I mean, both great recommendations. I mean, you know, it seems so, it's like common sense, right? You know, like,
right.
you know, you have something important to talk about. Like, let's say you had to, you know, I don't know, the last thing you want to do, like, let's say someone passes away. It's awful when you actually have to call people and tell them. You want to do it in person. And many times you're not able to do that. But so something like that, I think we're aware of, yeah, this needs to be done in person. But you're right, like even, you know, a serious conversation in a relationship should not be done. And we're not talking about like ending the relationship. We're just talking about like you know, something that you had a disagreement, or, you know, it might be confrontational. Don't do it in text or email or phone. Do it in person.
In person and not in the car. Also, what's really important, one last piece about that, is make sure you're either both standing or both sitting. If you have one person sitting and one person standing, it's threatening.
That's like domination.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're right. I mean, it's so funny how many things just go back to, you know, animalistic. But, you know, in a sense, that we are like, our physiology still has that remembrance, and
It does.
so it
It
makes
does.
sense.
And so it'll send our nervous system into a fight or flight response, and then we're off to a fight.
Yep,
Yep.
exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. Well, this has been awesome. Very, very eye-opening. And I want, before we leave, I want people to know how they can connect with you, how they can get a hold of you, whatever information you want to give for people to be able to reach out to you.
Yeah, sure. So our people can reach out right now. We're doing all of our therapy online on video or phone. And we have about 15 therapists working, doing video and phone. And people, I know people are, just to let people know, privacy is kind of, sometimes hard to get right now doing your therapy. And so I just want to remind people that, we can go sit in your car, walk and talk, go for a walk, um, turn on a sound machine, turn on an app for a sound machine, go in the laundry room and turn on the dryer. Like, we're getting really creative. We also know that people are sometimes home with kids, and they'll come in the room, and like, we're totally relaxed and chilled, knowing that there'll be interruptions. And, if you're going to, need your therapy, know that we'll work with whatever's going on. To make it possible. And people can reach us either through the website, which is, there's a contact page, westhartfordholisticcounseling.com. The email is info@West Hartford Holistic Counseling. They can call us. We have our live receptionist virtual. She's there every day, Nicole and Caitlin, both at 860-258-4171. And we have room to see people, and really flexible on hours too, because we know people have got kind of all different weird hours right now. So yeah, please, don't hesitate to call, and we'll help you figure out how to get it done.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
You have a great article coming out in our May issue 2, which is going to be online digitally on May 1st, and it'll be emailed out to everybody who's on our email list. And so you can find that at naturalnutmeg.com and our social media page at Natural Nutmeg Magazine. And I want to thank you again, Dori, for being with us today. This was awesome information.
Yeah,
And
thank you. It was fun. This is great.
you're welcome. Definitely. Hope everybody enjoyed it, and hope you all have a great day.
Thanks.